The Seattle Kraken call up some players from Coachella Valley, but what does this mean for the short term and long term for your favorite hockey team?
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? It's still a game day. That's right. The Seattle Kraken have their return to the ice as they will take on the Vancouver Canucks. The Seattle Kraken are 15-19-2. The Canucks are 17-10-7. This is an afternoon delight for those of you in the Pacific Northwest. You can find it on King Kong and Prime Video, and of course 93.3 KJR FM. And this is going to be an interesting game. The preview of this game by Bob Condor starts by quoting Yanni Gourde or referring to Yanni Gourde and his wife and Christmas, which of course is bittersweet when we hear of some of the rumors resurfacing that Yanni Gourde might be on the move. We know that Joey Daccord, Andre Burakovsky did not make this trip. Seems like they're maintenancing, if you will, as we sometimes hear Dan Bilesma say. But this is an important game for the Seattle Kraken, and this is what Bob Condor writes. Through 7 games over NHL 500, Vancouver is battling to stay among the 8 Western Conference squads in playoff position as the halfway mark of the season is fast approaching. The Canucks are 4-3-3 in their last 10 games and just broke a 3-game losing streak, edging San Jose just before the break, and are 7-7-5 at home. All reasons for Kraken optimism. So Bob Condor thinks that there is an opportunity for this Seattle Kraken squad. They really have to take some opportunity here because as this 2-part episode where we're really just tossing out hypotheticals is all about what is realistic for the Seattle Kraken now, but also what is the promise for the future. And at least for now, the Seattle Kraken absolutely have to figure out if they're a team that's going to make a big push or are they going to kind of look more to the future. Put another way, are they buyers or are they sellers? I don't think the Kraken have officially determined that yet, but I want to see them still put their best effort together to see what that actually looks like. I think that's the frustration for me in this season. And Zane mentions this. The Carolina Hurricanes game was the best, I think, example of what is possible with this roster. We have not seen the consistency, not even close to consistency this year. So what does it look like to save this season? I don't think we know, but again, Zame and I do have hope for the future. We talk at the end of the episode about the IIHF tournament and World Juniors because the movement of youths, not a Christmas movie, but highly recommend My Cousin Vinny. The youths, it's one of those things where there is promise. We have 8 players that are representing their federation at World Juniors, which is great for our pipeline. And, there are things that are important when you're building and growing your pipeline to have when it comes to the NHL squad. So again, not all doom and gloom, as you'll hear Zame and I say, but definitely room for improvement. So I hope you enjoy this second part of my conversation with Zane Begg on, what's realistic for this team, what's realistic for Philip Grubauer, and all that. Woo, Zane, it's time to get real. And I mean, I feel like Kraken fans have probably known that this conversation was coming. Like we've been doing a slow crawl to this. But the time has come, right? To just have a real conversation. Is this a good Seattle Kraken team? Is this a Seattle Kraken team that's on track? And if the answer is no to either one of these, then the third question becomes, is this a Kraken team that
needs to just go into a rebuild. I mean, I don't know. Where do you stand right now as we are, closing out 2024? What do you make of this team and what needs to happen moving forward?
What do I make of this team? I have no idea. I can't remember the last time I saw a hockey team that was so perplexing.
Perplexing is perfect.
It
Also,
is.
I like that
it would be one thing if they just didn't have the talent. Like year one, Kraken,
right?
Like, sure. When you're giving meaningful minutes to, Kalle Yarncroc and just like
it's giving great guy tries hard.
Yeah, right, great. But that's not. If he's the best center on your team, you have a real issue. So yeah, I do love Kalle Yarncroc, but they have the talent, and I think, and we have seen it in stretches. I think back to that Carolina game where they played so well. It wasn't just the Carolina game, but that was kind of the cherry on that road trip. The Islanders game was insane, but the Carolina, because Carolina is such a good team, and it just like shut down everything that Carolina does so well, and it was like their lowest shot total in like a decade. So the Kraken, I think they have the talent, they don't have the consistency. Now clearly they just made a coaching change, so it's probably not. We're probably not going to do that again. At least not, right away. You got to let this one play out a little bit. Yanni Gordon, in that interview, he talked about all the things that we say the Kraken need to do. It's not like they don't know, but they just haven't internalized it for whatever reason. And maybe that takes time. Maybe that is just something that will happen over the course of this season and into next. Because honestly, right now the playoff dream is basically dead. They are they're less than 3% to make the playoffs at this point. It's so brutal to be out by the new year. It's just so brutal. So, but that's the frustrating thing. The inaugural year, I was like, this team just it's just not a very talented roster, so it's fine. This team, I don't look at that. I don't see that. But there is good news here, which is, to whatever extent the veterans are not playing well, and to whatever extent you agree or disagree with Ron Francis's free agency decisions, scouting and drafting has been fantastic. And so, the phrase, going back to the Grubauer thing, how the Kraken can't outscore your problems. Here, I think the Kraken might be able to outdraft their problems. And that's really good if you're thinking about a rebuild or a retool or a reload or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, or some hybrid of that.
Or some hybrid, yeah. So, but the prospects are there. The drafting acumen is there. They have a bunch of draft picks. Ron Francis is really good at getting a surplus value. And that compounds over years with your franchise. And then one day you wake up and you're like, whoa, when did this team get good? So there's a path. This happened to the New Jersey Devils a few years ago. Where it was
exactly.
This team's bad, and they're collecting assets. They're bad. And they're like, whoa, this team's good now. And so sometimes that switch just flips. And so it's not like it's not often a slow burn. It's like this team was bad last year and now they're good, or this team was good last year and now they're bad. I'm looking at you, New York Rangers. So things can happen. Things can change fast, and that is the biggest lesson I think to take away from any like really bad lost season is no matter how bad it is, it can turn around pretty quickly.
This episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at Game Time. I say it all the time. I love the Game Time app. I have it right here on my smartphone when I travel to Seattle to cover the Seattle Kraken, the Seattle Storm, or anytime I'm on the road, I always check out the Game Time app. And that is because Game Time is focused on togetherness, especially this holiday season. That means when you bring people together at live events, the experience is that much better. And that is why I like using Game Time, especially when I go to Seattle. I don't have a lot of family members who love baseball as much as I do. They know that I'm huge into sports, but baseball is that one sport that minor league level, college level, pro level, I just get to enjoy. And so the aspect of togetherness and finding some good tickets on Game Time when I'm in Seattle to go see the M's play with a good friend of mine is always great. And on Game Time, you can find so many cool features like the new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show only the incredible deals on great seats. So you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets and you can focus more on that togetherness. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, go create that account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time.
Yes, and the prospects, I think, especially apropos with World Juniors happening. We're recording on day 2 of World Juniors. We'll get into just quickly what some of our prospects are doing at World Juniors, representing several different countries. I love everything that you're talking about. I love it. And I'm with it. And there's just a piece of me that still has questions about some front office decision making in the last handful of seasons. And then also, the YouTube comments have been very, very active. I appreciate those who are polite in the comments, which is overwhelmingly the majority of you. But you know who you are. Anyway, I also think, and this is something that you said, Zane, that I find so interesting, but I'm starting to maybe understand a little bit better. The future of the NBA returning to Seattle and why that might be putting pressure on an ownership group, and then how that relates to what then happens at the front office level, and then, of course, on the ice. That puzzle maybe I'm starting to understand it a little bit more, because there are just certain things I don't understand that are going on with this team. I don't know whether I think that everything is bad. I don't think everything is bad. I certainly don't think everything is good, but what is the balance? And is there a specific area or department where that's coming from? And that's the piece that I can't quite figure out. The consistency and the urgency, the accountability, that's from the players. I do think that I agree with you. Dan Bylsma, he's a new head coach. I mean, unless you're the Chicago Sky and you hire a Hall of Famer and then you fire her before a year, most teams don't do that. I don't see the Seattle Kraken doing that. I hope they don't do that. I'm not saying that the coaching staff is beyond critique or criticism, but I don't think that we're going to see that change happen anytime soon. But they also have to make some changes to get this team to just be more motivated.
This episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Now, we know the NFL playoffs are almost here, but it is not too late to get in on the action this regular season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So make sure you head over to FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. All you have to do is make your first $5 bet a winner. And you can make every moment more at FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And of course, us here at the Locked On Podcast Network.
But again, I just see trade deadline and especially off-season pass, and I'm left shaking my head, scratching my head, I should say, both really, on what the Seattle Kraken have done to not future-proof. Because to your point, future-proofing, I think, in theory, we've done an okay job with. But when you have a Riker Evans, a Shane Wright, to an extent, a Joey Decord coming up, right, from Coachella Valley, and they're coming up to a team that at best is confused about its identity, but sometimes at worst is just not playing to its potential or isn't even built to play to its potential, then are we even going to see the best of those prospects? Sometimes I worry about that. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, then that's the Capo Caco situation, right? It's like he's drafted second overall, but then never got top 6 minutes, and he was never given the ice time. And I know the Rangers are more talented, and so there are some considerations there, but he wasn't used enough, and he wasn't developed properly. And maybe in a better developmental environment, he would not be traded for peanuts. As the Rangers are completely falling apart, making impulsive move after impulsive move because they had a bad half season.
James Dolan is he's a character. I'll just say that. I'm wearing my New York Liberty stuff. This is the Brooklyn era of New York. I'll just leave it at that. James Dolan is definitely a character, and I can't imagine he's not in that mix of craziness happening in New York.
Ask a traumatized Knicks fan how they feel about James Dolan.
Right, exactly. Again. If you know, you know, and if you don't know, good for you. You don't need to know. Don't worry about it. Just be happy. Just be a happy person. If you have no idea why James Dolan is, air quotes, interesting.
One quick thing about
Yeah.
I just wanted, because this is so funny, regarding the Kraken and James Dolan and drafts. So this last summer, the draft was at the Sphere in Las Vegas, which is owned by James Dolan.
Yes.
And at the trade deadline last year, the Rangers wanted to trade for somebody to help them, win a cup. And Dolan told them, you cannot trade your first round pick because we want to have the glitz and glamour of doing a first round pick at the Sphere. And so they ended up getting Alex Wenberg for a second round pick when they could have spent a first round pick to get a better player. And that is just like the most James Dolan thing ever. But as a result, the Kraken did benefit, and they got a nice second round pick for an expiring contract on Alex Wenberg. So I just want to tie that all back together and really just take another shot at James Dolan because my goodness,
it's deserved. I'm conflicted. I never committed to the Knicks. I was like, the Mets is enough heartache for one small human at the time. But I, as a New Yorker, it hurts to hear, I'm not a Rangers fan, but it hurts to hear that the Rangers are going through this, but anyway, all of that to say, now we'll come back to this side or your side of the country, because I'm somewhere in the middle, to come back to the West Coast, to come back to the Seattle Kraken. That would be like the worst, right? And I don't think it's even I don't think James Dolan and the ownership group of the Seattle Kraken are even remotely the same, but just that feeling of there's this massive disconnect between ownership and what actually makes sense on the ice. I just don't want to see that happen. Again, I don't think it is going to happen, but there is some figuring out that needs to be done. Is it doom and gloom? No. If anything, I think that there are just some things that we need to pivot the frame and really know what we're about. I think it's almost like sometimes we want to be everything. Sometimes we want to be maybe just one thing. And I don't know what the balance is. And I think we got to figure that out. But again, we do have some prospects that you can watch, Zane, In the World Juniors happening now, the amazing Allison Lucan has a preview. There will also be a static page and updates that we will get. But Zane, what have we seen from some of our guys? We've got Berkeley Catton, Caden Price. I know a lot of people, myself included, very curious to see what Edward Shala is going to be able to do and how he will develop. I think he could have his own kind of Shane Wright version of development, hopefully. That just being that it was maybe a little tough in the beginning, but it all pans out. But anything noteworthy that we can say just after the first day and a half of World Juniors with relation to our prospects?
Well, there are eight Kraken prospects in the World Juniors. So let's talk about deep prospect pipelines. And Edward Chalet is he had a goal. He had a power play goal. Looked really good. He's got a real nice shot, and it was more adjusting to the North American game, and because the ice size is different, and kind of just learning hockey, and also figuring out what his compete level is. Which was the other concern about him, but that bodes well. Let's see, at Berkeley Catton, he didn't have a goal, but he had 6 shots on goal in 13 minutes of ice time. It's just nuts. And Caden Price also had a goal. Excuse me, he had a beautiful assist to set up a goal, but it was a really nice primary assist. And you've got players who are. I mean, it's only a couple games, so it's not like everyone's going to be popping off.
It's still early in the tournament. But I think it's great that we have, 8 players, 8 prospects across, and I personally love this, across 5 different federations as well.
Yeah, it's really exciting because this is, if you want to go back to the hopefulness, this is the hope for the Kraken, right? Is seeing all these young players, and they're all doing well, and they're all coming up, and that's what you want to see. And so can the Kraken outdraft their problems? I think quite possibly yes. And a powerful draft strategy is going to be much better long-term than a powerful free agency strategy. And it's exciting because, as you said, it's not doom and gloom. It's Seattle in the winter, so maybe there is some gloom. But you know what? Just like every winter in Seattle, it feels like it will never end. But then sunny days, they show up. And then you have these beautiful summers. And so gloom can come without doom. And I think that's where we are right now. Yeah, I feel a little gloomy about the Kraken. It should be. I mean, they're not very good. They're not fun to watch. But dooming, I'm not there. I'm just not. There's just too much talent, too much draft talent.
And that's what it is. There is a lot of talent and there's a lot of potential. It just kind of has to be organized in a little bit less of a hot mess. So, or less of a hot, what am I trying to say? It needs to show up as a hot mess with less frequency than it currently is now. I mean, you're not going to win them all, right? But this is just a team that, even though, and again, we're going to have to get into, because I really want to get into some of what we talked about offline. We're going to have to do a deeper dive here, but the construction of this team leaves some things to be desired. What is the focus in the right place? But even with that said, the good news is that this team can perform better. It's not likely that will lead to a playoff spot. I think technically it's mathematically possible, extremely unlikely that will happen. But even if it's not making a playoff push for this year, the good news is that in theory, right, on paper, this can be a team that can put it together. And we just have to figure out what is going to be that driving force. Is it going to be an infusion of youths? Will the coaching staff connect and be able to really get the players back on track?
And thank you, as always, for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. I hope you enjoyed this. And we didn't talk too much about World Juniors, but if you want to hear a conversation about why we don't see a women's hockey equivalent of World Juniors, or you really want to catch up on PWHL action, then make sure you head over to Locked On NHL. That's right. Every Saturday, we have the Women's Hockey Report, where I, alongside Rachel Donner, talk about women's hockey. We mostly focus on international and the PWHL, but I will always do my best to sprinkle in a little college knowledge in there, especially we've got Beanpot coming up and all that good stuff. So, as always, thank you so much for tuning in. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others. And it's a game day. So, we hold fast, we stay true. And for those who will be tuning in, we say loud and proud, let's go Kraken. I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace out, everybody.